Session 8 of Albert Flynn DeSilver's Writing as a Path to Awakening Writer's Workshop focuses on devotion. Here are some highlights of the workshop. Devotion. Give yourself the permission to flow. 1. Commit to writing regularly and you will open up space to explore your creative potential. 2. Devote yourself to excellence. Share your work, edit and revise. Strive to make it the best it can be. 3. When listening to feedback, distance yourself from your work. Remember that it is still in progress. 4. Receive compliments. Look for patterns in feedback and trust your intuition.
Okay, so where were we? The theme of the month is devotion. And I think devotion in writing, part of devotion in writing is, staying consistent and staying devoted to something that nourishes you, right? I mean, we have to sort of keep asking this question, like, oh, is this something that's nourishing my life, nourishing my creative being? And if so, I want to keep doing it. I want to stay devoted to that. I mean, think about what that word means to you in your own life. The things that you're truly devoted to. I mean, there's a lot of connotations to that word, devotion, religious connotations. But if we take them out of the baggage of those connotations, what does devotion mean? What are you devoted to in your life? Who are you devoted to? And what's it like to be devoted to the practice of writing, the practice of creativity? And what does that look like in your life? We can bring this back also to those declarations we made a couple months ago of, whether it was committing to writing 200 words or 500 words or 1,000 words or whatever it is, and having that be kind of part of our devotion. Also, part of the devotion, I think, is taking it to that next level of editing and wanting to get professional, in quotes, feedback. And well, if I'm going to make this stuff public, if I want to write and have an audience, a public audience, I want to be devoted to making this work the best I possibly can, right? And I want to have a devotion to excellence in all these areas of my life, but in particular in the writing, which means sharing it among peers, sharing it among professionals, and getting a sense of, how it's sounding in the world, and figuring out how to take in that feedback and take in that learning. I mean, writing is nothing if not practice and process, and it evolves through the actual doing of it, right? Like anything, the practice of it, and that's part of the doing, is that willingness to share the work, to be. I mean, it takes a certain level of vulnerability and courage, right? To be willing to share it with all these perfect strangers, and to feel like, okay, are they gonna love me? Are they not gonna love me? Are they gonna love my work? Are they not gonna love my work? This is a tricky realm to step into. Now, I'm assuming most of us have had some experience with getting feedback or being in critique. Yes? No?
Mm-hmm.
No? Okay.
Well, in college.
In college, okay.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And in college, it can be even more ruthless because we're less evolved as human beings.
That was just last year for me.
Oh, okay.
I just graduated
okay.
last year, so
Oh,
it's not
great.
too bad, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe you had a fair number of younger people in your, not to diss on younger people, but
Yeah.
they tend
Very
to,
much.
not, I mean, this is a total generalization. So take this off our head. No, they tend to just work from from right?
This was just
an
feedback
idea.
mostly from the teachers.
Oh, from the teachers, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Which is
there's
actually
plenty
good.
of adults too who are just sort of stuck in belief and opinion, and not that there can't be value in that, but I think it needs to be tempered with a sense of compassion, a sense of context, a sense of larger understanding, which is where the whole mindfulness thing comes in.
It's such an interesting way, I hate when my voice comes on this, but such an interesting way to put it, that they are, driven by just opinion. That it is a very no, it's not just youthful, but a specific type of person that is driven by that. I like that.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, and belief
Mm-hmm.
and perception. I mean, that's part of human consciousness. That's part of being human. But one of the things that's so beautiful and powerful about meditation and mindfulness, it gives us some sense of context of that we don't have to be bound exclusively. You know, some people get really rigidly tied down to their opinions and their beliefs, and this is what causes conflict, right? And so can we open up a little bit more spaciousness? And at the same time know that there's work out there, there's creative expression out there that does speak to us more than other kinds of work. Mm-hmm. That there is this communication that's happening with some work and not happening as much with other work. But I do want to, there are a few little things that I just want to mention as we're listening to each other's work. And some of this is going to be obvious to you, but some of it will be like good reminders, because I want to create an atmosphere that's supportive and that's constructively critical. That word itself, though, even critical, is kind of a tough word, right? Yeah. It's a loaded word. But here we are with constructive critique, because we do want our work to evolve and we want it to become better. But there's a couple things that we can do. One is that we can really address the work and the writer as opposed to the person. So if we're talking about Robin's work, we're not talking about Robin and her personality and her being. We're talking about her creation, her writing. And there's a difference there, right? And sometimes it can feel like someone is critiquing us and not necessarily our work. So I think if we focus on the work itself, that's number one. And also it's important as the receiver to think about, like, oh yeah, this is a work, this is a creative work that came out of the ether. Is this my work? Am I the exclusive creative genius behind it? Or is it that this work came from everything that I've learned throughout my lifetime, everything that I've read, overheard bits of conversation, things that I've integrated that I'm not even conscious of, that all goes into the mix and gets filtered through my experience and my consciousness, and then comes out on the page in this way, in this time. And so not to get too overly attached to this creation, to our baby, our darlings, mm-hmm. as they sometimes call them, be they our characters or our essays or our blurbs or whatever. So having a little bit of distance, a little bit of separation from the work, I think is important on both ends. I think it's important too to begin on focusing on what's working. What do you like about this piece that you just heard or that you just read? Where's the energy? Where's the vitality? What's speaking to you? Start there. And then when it comes to like, oh, I got kind of hung up here, you can form it you phrase it in the form of a question. What if you tried doing this? What if you use this word or this phrase? How might that make the work even more powerful for me or for some of us? And finish, it's good. I think it's good to finish with a positive statement of considering how much effort and energy somebody put into this piece of writing, that they're willing to offer it to the context. And remember too, number one, even though there's already been an number one, is to realize that this is work in progress, right? This is not a totally finished, polished thing. This isn't review, right? We're not asking for review. We're asking for critique, which is in process. And so that's really helpful too. It's like, oh yeah, this is not finished, so I'm not being judged on my final work, which is different. Like when the book is out in the world and you get these reviews from people, that's going to be a little bit, that's another thing altogether. But that's not what we're doing here. We're in process. So we're critiquing and sharing. And as a recipient, be prepared to just listen, to kind of just take things in, to receive the compliments, to take the critiques with a grain of salt, and look for patterns. That's what I like to do, is I look for patterns. So if I send my work out to 5 people, and 4 of those people said that, Mrs. Pillywinkle shouldn't have a red hat, then I should probably take out the red hat, right? So look for patterns, look for things that you hear over and over again, and try and be honest with yourself about trust your intuition around it too. Not to be overly influenced by groupthink necessarily, because at some point you're going to have to make a decision internally and intuitively, like, well, you know what, I really like the hat, and I'm going to keep the red hat because it's my favorite thing in the world. And then there's consequences to that. But what else do I want to say? I think it's also thinking about, like, when the feedback is all over the place, or if there's no real consensus, then that's maybe an opportunity for you to realize, well, then maybe this is, like, in the realm of opinion, and that's the time to look inward and to reassess the work itself. And did I give this a full 100% try, or maybe was I more around like 60%? And should I revisit this and rewrite this before I present it back out into the world? So it takes a lot of self-reflection, self-honesty, patience, and compassion. Compassion with yourself, compassion with each other, to just be really honest and patient and true. Anything else? Anybody else wants to add to this conversation, just about maybe you've had experiences, you've been in critique groups?
Well, I was smiling through a lot of this because my most recent critique experience as a student was in architecture school. And,
Interesting.
Critique in architecture school is brutal.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's no, I think critique in writing groups is a lot gentler than critique in architecture school. But I one thing I was always aware of, and it was always usually the teachers or outside critics that were doing it, not fellow students, is the role of ego.
Mm-hmm.
The sort
Absolutely.
of it's not just opinion, but sort of like the need to show how smart you are,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, in terms of giving a critique.
Yeah, right. So yeah, keeping our egos in check is can be tricky, right? Because when is it our ego speaking and when is our heart speaking? And I think that's why I love the whole mindfulness thing so much, and the meditation thing, because it's this invitation to keep coming back to our heart and sort of letting that, like, boastful little ego, little self over here, it's always chattering, saying, hey, look at me, look at how much I know.
That's such a
letting
good
it go.
observation for classrooms.
Yeah, no, it's really great. Thank you for that, Francis.